Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And before we get started, just want to note that the session is actually being recorded. So if you're shy about being recorded, make sure your camera is switched off. Everyone should be on mute, but if you want an extra safety precaution, please make sure of that. And so this session here is from Jeremey Donovan from SalesLoft. So he's going to be talking about how to double your reply rates. Jeremy, here you go. Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate it. Welcome, folks. Hey, salespeople. And I can already see there's some good chat going on. Today, we're going to cover, if you guys know me, a lot of actionable, data-driven best practices for prospecting. So we've got only a half an hour. I'm going to dive right into it, and we'll have to go with some speed. I do very much welcome questions. So as we go, just hit Can you? Hopefully, someone asked me if I'm muted. Can you guys hear me? Can someone give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you can hear me? Perfect. Okay, awesome. I had a little nervous moment there. So we'll go fast and furious, but I am watching the chat box. So just go ahead and ask questions as we go, and I'll hit them in real time. So we're going to cover four main things here, even though my numbering says 3-3. We'll talk a little about cadences, talk briefly about personalization. I'm not sure if a woman named Beck Holland is presenting at Tenbound, but if you're not following her, she is a must follow right now. We'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that she is out there evangelizing, and then I'll give you these data-driven best practices, and we'll wrap. All right. People are pretty familiar with cadences. Obviously, that is things where you are trying to get people's attention via all the usual channels, phone, email, social, and so on. And I just actually took a demo from a rep this morning. It was actually my last call before this. And that rep had been prospecting me diligently for probably some months. Email, social, phone calls, the whole deal. I didn't respond. And then all of a sudden, about last week, my boss asked me for something in particular. And it turns out that the thing that the person had been prospecting me about was exactly what the boss was looking for. It was hunting down prior users who have moved to new companies. And so the timing was perfectly right. So he and I just chatted before this meeting, and we're chatting again next Monday. So it just proves that you really need this constant level of engagement until the person has a particular need for what you're offering. All right. So this is actually the cadence that we use at SalesLoft for outbound prospecting. There is a lot of data science actually built into this cadence. As you can see, it's 15 touches over 16 days. It would take a half an hour to probably go through this in detail, but I'll just hit on some of the data science highlights that are in here. First of all, the one of the things that we're sort of tapping into is the psychology of people, in that they will ignore repetition but pay attention when things don't look like they are sort of at a regular rhythm. So the non-regular rhythm here is that what we're doing is we're following this +1 rule. So we're doing touches on day 1. We add 1, so that's the +1 to day 2, and then +1 again. So we're going to do day 2. So +1 +2 to day 4, +3 to day 7, +4 to day 11, +5 to day 16. So what you're doing is you're expanding the amount of time that you are waiting to give a little bit of breathing room and not look like you're following a particular rhythm. So that's one piece, that sort of Fibonacci-esque sequence. It's not exactly a Fibonacci series, but it's pretty close. So +1, +2, +3, +4, and so on. So that gives you the breathing room. The other thing I think people are pretty familiar with as well is the idea of having multiple touches on a single day, 2 calls or 2 emails. So that's kind of another major highlight. So I think those are just for the sake of time, those are the 2 major differences. There's 2 major data-driven things that we're doing. Someone asked in the chat whether we've actually changed our call strategy now that people aren't in the office. We were watching the data in March and April, and we saw that indeed in March connect rates had fallen pretty significantly. The typical connect rate, we measure a connect rate as a call lasting at least 120 seconds, lasting at least 2 minutes. And those connect rates are usually around 6%. They had dropped obviously in March and April, but now everyone's got their remote telephony set up. So no, we have not made a substantial change. And we internally and our customers are also seeing that connect rates have restabilized. So yeah, not a major call strategy change now that we're into certainly into May and June of what's going on. One thing that I found fascinating, having run sales development teams at different companies and worked with many of our customers, is this question about how many activities it takes to create a new opportunity. So this is not so much about the 15 touches over the over that 16 days. By the way, yes, it's being recorded. It's not so much about the 15 touches over the 16 days. This is, say, let's take your total team, AEs, whatever, SDRs, whomever is prospecting, how many total activities over a period of time. So let's say you were to take your entire team, add up all their activities, and then divide by all of their opportunities that actually get generated, qualified opportunities generated. What is that number? And this number is actually shockingly high. And so usually I would ask people, actually, you know what, take a second, chat something in there to see what your guess is for how many activities it takes to generate a new opportunity. 150, 200, 13, 300, some in the teens, 1,000. 75, 770. Yep. So we're sort of, I bet if we average that, we probably are, we're probably kind of getting in there, 770, 500. So the truth of the matter is it does lie in obviously that kind of broad range that you saw. But if you're really being honest, it's about 200 to 300 is the typical number. And what I've seen is newer sellers who are familiarizing themselves with the value proposition and so on, obviously can be much higher. I've seen that as high as like 500 or above. The people who are seasoned and really focused at who they're prospecting, great tight personalization, outstanding ability on the phone, those people get down to like 80 to 100. So it is possible to get that down, I think, in the 80 to 100 range. But again, the way to think about this is, if you think about the 15 touches on the previous screen, is it's like you're hitting 15 people 15 times and one of them turns into a qualified opportunity. So as we all know, this is incredibly hard work. All right, let's spend a little bit of time on personalization, then we'll dig into the 16 data-driven best practices for how you can especially tune your emails and calling. So first thing, we've been talking about this for years. This is based on a study that was of about 200 million emails, and we looked at the reply rate, so that's what you have on the y-axis here, versus the degree to which you personalize the email. And the way we did this was we're able in SalesLoft to figure out what percentage of a template has been changed. So if you just send the template as is, you might have some dynamic tags in there with the person's name or company name that doesn't count. Then that's 0% personalization. And as you can see, you get a relatively poor email reply rate when you do that. The opposite end of the spectrum is where you've blown away the template. So you've blown away all the hard work that your team has put into optimizing and wrote your own. There you can see you get back down. So what's happening here is you get this high return on investment as you personalize up to about 20% of the email. That analysis didn't care whether it was the first 20% or where that 20% was, but in general, yes, I would say you want to personalize the first 20%. After you hit 20%, you get very little return on effort. So that we basically recommend to our customers to stop personalizing once you hit about 20% of the content. Once you hit 80% and beyond, you're actually doing damage because you're destroying, again, all that hard work that your prospect had put on. Someone asked a great question, which I'm going to address because it's something that will feed through here. All of these reply rates are positive. Or sorry, all these reply rates are just reply rates. They're positive and negative. The what you're going to see going forward is a lot of comparative stats. So in general, people are not mostly positive reply rate. You don't often get people emailing remove me from the list. It does happen, but more often they're going to click an opt-out link in the process, or just ignore it or mark it as spam. All right, so let's look at a typical prospecting email. It's one I got back in November. And again, in the interest of time, I won't go super deep, but just suffice it to say, right, subject line, relatively short, very direct ask. We'll figure out whether that's a good thing or not. The greeting, they said, "Hey, Jeremy." Is it good to say hey or hi or hello or just Jeremy? What's the best thing to do there? It's got that typical hook that you see in all the emails, got a value prop, it's got a call to action, and then that signature, it signs off with best. You could have thanks, sincerely, whatever. So we're going to look at all the little pieces of that. I don't think there's some good parts of this. There's some bad parts. It's not particularly personalized, right? They dropped in my name. They dropped in my company name, but I know those are probably just dynamic tags. The companies that they're referencing are look to be like not necessarily direct competitors. In fact, there's a bunch of customers in there, so that probably goes on all of their emails. But we'll take a look. But I wanted to shift to just saying again, credit to Beck Holland here. His content is amazing. If you have not, you can just go to YouTube and look up Flip the Script and watch everything she does. About 20 years ago, and the guy's still active, Jeff Hoffman, started a company called Basho Strategies that was promoting a lot of the same stuff. Unfortunately, there's no books available there, but he still does. Beck works for a SaaS company, so she's not in the training business, but Jeff is in the training business, so he's a great resource. But there's basically this progression of ways to prospect, and if you can find it, use the prospect's own created content, right? So if you're prospecting me, I create a ton of stuff. You can reference that stuff when you prospect me, and I'm way more likely to respond. Or, if you're prospecting an exec, they will are often being interviewed on podcasts or webinars, or like super high level execs from Fortune 1000 companies may have like TV interviews and so on. So you should often find prospect created content. If you can't find that, then they might have engaged with some content, right? Liked, shared, comments on LinkedIn, for example. If you can't find that, then go to the LinkedIn profile, look and see if there are certain self-attributed traits, often in the tagline that they have. And you can go through, Beck's amazing content to sort of get more drill down on that. I'm just going to focus right now on this prospect created content because that's the best way to do it. I when I met Beck and started to get into learning her stuff, I was so tempted to ask her to give me her actual email content, and I realized if I really want to learn this, I have to actually go through the work of trying to prospect her. So that's what I did, even though we had already been chatting. And I drafted this email to her, and I'll talk through a few pieces here. So subject line, hyper personalized here. I abbreviated Flip the Script as FTS. I've never seen her do that, but I thought it would be sort of a nice pattern interrupt to get her attention. And then I referenced something that is part of her prospect created content. You'll see why in a second. I used Hey Beck. We're going to get into Hey, why I like Hey so much. And then I wrote, I've been devouring your FTS videos and loved your anecdote about, and then a direct quote from her content. And then I got hyper specific here in minute 23 of session 3. So what this is doing is that she knows there is almost no way. I mean, maybe, IBM Watson or something like that could do this, but there's almost no way that a computer could have done this first sentence. So I am triggering, reciprocity for the effort that I have put in to looking at her content. And I'm showing her that I know her in a deep way. And then the next part of Beck's advice is when you do your value prop, you need to segue. And I think this is a mistake a lot of people make. I often will see personalization in that first sentence, and then there's no segue into the value prop. And the segue is so important. And all you have to do is something like this, right? Just like insert, whatever it was you were talking about. So in this case, streaming music services, you have many choices in blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to read our value prop. And kind of that's it. On the call to action, in this case, I just used, are you open to a quick screen share? There's some good content out from Gong recently that talked about calls to action. And they said that these open-ended calls to action actually have the highest response rates compared to like a direct embed of a calendar or suggesting a specific time. So this is following that particular best practice, and then I sign off. Thanks, Alfred. I appreciate the comment. I do try to bring value, so let's get into some more value, hopefully, in the 14 minutes we have left. So I got 14 minutes and 16 tips, so we are going to go very, very fast and furious here. I even have a 17th bonus tip at the end, which is a very timely tip. All right. So people often ask me, what's the best day of the week or time of the day to engage? And I think this question drives me bonkers because it's not like you get to choose. And the good news is you don't have to choose. Every day is fine. As one of my coworkers said, the time to engage is now. So on the left-hand side, you see, and all the rest of the charts are going to look like this reply rate multiplier. So on the left-hand side, you see the reply rate multiplier and the day of week on the x-axis. What a one means here is that it's the average reply rate over. We usually look at samples of between 2 and 10 million emails to do these. So I think this one was, most of these are 3 million emails unless I comment otherwise. So a 1.0 x multiplier means whatever your typical reply rate is, that's what you're going to get times 1. The 1.1 means you multiply that reply rate times another 10%. So for instance, if you had a 5% reply rate, then you'd get to a 5.5. Or if you had a 3% reply rate, you get to a 3.3. So that's what that means. So as you can see, it's like the same every day. The only reason Friday is lower is because Friday afternoon is actually bad, and it's bad like Saturday. And the only reason Sunday is low is because Sunday, until Sunday evening is bad, and then Sunday late in the day is fine. Someone asked if a cadence is not available for a contact. That's a really great question. Sorry, if a phone number is not available for a contact, that's a really great question. Then do an email only cadence, or sorry, email and social. I apologize. Do email and social. Single channel cadences, reply or just engagement rates basically drop on the order of anywhere from 70 to 90%. So you definitely want to avoid single channel. If you don't have phone number, use email and use social. For phone calls, by the way, same thing. This is the time of the day in the caller's time zone. We can also flip that to the time of day of the call of the recipient's time zone, but it doesn't really matter. As I said before, connect rates typically average around 6%, and they're pretty much the same no matter when you call. So don't sweat the actual call time. What I found super interesting is a lot of pundits out there who don't have data will say, hey, you should call like early in the morning or late in the day because the executive is sitting at their desk and their administrative assistant may not be there. Obviously, it's sort of a pre-COVID comment, but we'll get back to normal at some point. But even so, this data is actually pre-COVID that I'm showing here. Some of it I'm going to show you is post or during COVID, I should say. But it's actually not true. You don't actually do better in those off hours. All right, I'm going to keep going as I also scan the questions here. So number 2 is kind of obvious. Everyone knows you need to respond to inbound leads rapidly. I think the key insight for us was we hit 100 different companies and tried to figure out what their inbound response rate was. And even though everyone knows you're supposed to respond fast, the problem is only about 40% actually respond within 5 minutes. About combined 60% or so within the first hour, which is still, I think, probably fine. You got a lot of companies still, so 40% of companies that are still not responding fast enough, and even 10% who don't respond at all. Yes, this was, someone asked what the response was. So we used demo request. We hit the demo request or the contact us if demo request was not available. And so not so much an email response, but a demo, like a direct demo request. So this, in theory, is a hot inbound lead. When we use contact us, we use language like interested in buying, would like to speak to a salesperson. So zero excuse for not responding. All right, everything else now we're going to switch over pretty much to email land, even though I had a couple comments on calls there. Same setup here, reply rate multipliers, and then we're going to look at different things. So first is subject lines, keep them short. As you can see, you have an 87% higher reply rate if you use a one-word subject line. People ask me, what's the magic word? The magic word most often is actually your own company name. So yes, if you have a 2-word company name, use 2 words. You don't have to concatenate them. and so on. So your company name. I'll often get asked, what if your company is not well known? Still the same thing, actually, is if your company is not well known, that might be just as interesting because you're hitting that kind of curiosity psychological lever as well. So most of the time, use your company name. We actually looked at this common practice of putting other things in the subject line. So we already looked at the company, the sender company. We also looked, sometimes people put the recipient company in there or the recipient's first name. Recipient company, as you can see, is okay. Doesn't get you away from the average. What's actually bad is putting that person's first name, the recipient's first name in the email. So do not do that. You'll experience on average at scale a 12% reduction in your reply rate if you do that. What's going on here, I think, is some of these techniques that I'll talk about are things that are rooted in psychology, and then some of them are rooted in just sort of unexpectedness. So a while back, putting a person's first name was something that machines couldn't easily do, and now everyone knows machines do that, so it looks like marketing spam. Someone asked, yeah, in that previous slide, right? So that use one word. The one word you should use is your own company name, not their company name. Your own company name. All right. I'm often asked, what is the single best thing you can do? And the single best thing to do is to use the word referred in the subject line. But it is, of course, not the word that matters. It is the fact that you spent the effort actually getting the referral from a trusted source. So what's old is new in sales. Referrals are always the best thing you can do. Obviously, you can't build. It's very difficult to build a business in the tens or hundreds of millions of revenue or even billions of revenues on referrals alone, but that will always remain your best friend. All right. Tip number 6. Just like subject lines, you want to keep your email body short. As you can see, effectively things that fit on your mobile screen, right? 25 words, 50 words, fine. 100 words, you start to tail off, and then over 100 words, you see a dramatic decrease in your reply rate. I got today, someone sent me a LinkedIn message, email sort of formatted, that was just like so long. After I just looked at the length of it without and just stopped, because anyone who is seriously trying to engage me is not going to send me something over 100 words. On that one, did I respond to that LinkedIn message? Absolutely not. But if you send me a message, personally on LinkedIn, and I encourage everyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, I pretty much respond to, not necessarily if you're prospecting me, but if you're asking me questions or, just saying a personal howdy, I'll say a personal howdy back to you. But yeah, if you send me an over 100 word email or LinkedIn, I'm not going to pay attention. All right. COVID. So we've been monitoring, month by month, as I said, prospecting activity, call activity, the use of different language. And as I put in here, your prospects are so over COVID. If you put COVID in the subject line, you get a 47% decrease in your response rate. If you put COVID or coronavirus in your as a start of your first sentence, right, it's abominable. So just in your emails, don't mention COVID. It's overdone at this point. What can you do? So it's not so helpful to tell you what not to do, but what you can do. A lot of people are putting, right, I hope you're well, hoping you're well. Don't put it in your subject line so that you get a decrease in response rate, but it's perfectly fine to put like hoping as the first hope, or hoping you're well as the first word of the first sentence. Perfectly fine to put it anywhere in the first sentence. So I think, right, showing empathy is always a welcome thing. Someone asked about we're all in this together. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have it in here. I might have it, but we looked at even just like we, and I'll talk about we. So just hold that thought for a minute. we have a podcast called Hey Salespeople. We start our subject lines with Hey, and this is why. It's because the using Hey actually has a significant increase in the reply rate. This is one of those that I think will go away over time, just as everyone starts to use it and it becomes familiar. So you're always trying to do some sort of different pattern interrupt. So who knows, maybe like howdy or or something else will work more effectively. So these things will change over time, but Hey has been working pretty effectively now for the better part of a year. All right, so we got 6 more to go in 4 minutes. So this is going to be super rapid fire. So we looked. There's all these people who pundits again without data who talk about like I, you, we, and so on. So we looked at the first word of the first sentence, and it turns out that it is totally fine to use I as the first word of the first sentence. In fact, you get a higher than average reply rate. If you start with you or we, that's actually bad. You're losing about 40% in reply rate. So I is actually perfectly fine. Now let's move on to the using sort of emphasis at the end of that first sentence. So we actually looked at using an exclamation mark at the end of the first sentence versus a question or a period. Turns out you get a much higher response rate with an exclamation mark. Don't overdo this, of course, but this is a like super hot off the presses, just run data, and do a nice short first personalized sentence, end it with an exclamation mark, and that's a winning strategy right now. Conversational balance. So again, this whole thing about like use you as much as possible, avoid I think is total. Now we know from data is like total BS. On the left-hand side, that's emails that only use the word you, doesn't use I at all. On the right-hand side, only uses I's, no U's. What you can see is you get the best response rates sort of in the middle. And what my take from that is simply that these are it's conversational balance. It's just write emails as you would speak to others. I'm going to apologize for the speed and not being able to take questions. If you do have questions, send them to me on LinkedIn after this. I also have a virtual booth office hours that I will be hosting from 2 to 3 p.m. So if you have more questions, go ahead and join us at that virtual booth between 2 and 3. Bullets, dashes, all bad. Keep your emails short. Don't make it look like marketing is the quick 30-second version of that. Stick to plain text. Avoid all these things, underline, bold, italics. Again, just write emails as you would to a friend or a colleague without making it look in any way, shape, or form like a marketing email. Ditto with hyperlinks. It's basically the same thing. Yes, you can use 0 or 1. One hyperlink is perfectly fine. If you start to load your emails with hyperlinks, your reply rates will crater. Because again, it looks like a marketing email, and that's not the point of what you're doing. Someone asked on the data points you multiply. What do you do? Right. So whatever your average reply rate is, you multiply by those numbers. And one last one and a bonus tip. So the last one is best way to sign off is best. So you saw in those samples emails I had used best, and this is why we found that that's the best way to end. Cheers, quite effective. These things that are a bit more formal, I've been using regards for the better part of 20 years, does not work. So avoid the overly formal thing. Use that warm, empathetic thing. And then just to conclude, and I feel bad rushing this, but super important. In the moment we are in a historic moment in the world, and we went and looked at reply rates based on the race of the sender, and we used a sort of name classification database to that was based on census data to classify names. We used 10 million emails here because we were obviously hyper worried about the accuracy of the data, and we ran this through statistical significance, and it has a humongously high statistical significance. And what you can see is emails that come from Black senders get replied to 14% less. It's just a tragic and horrific finding that you've got effectively the same content sent from different senders. One person has a stereotypically ethnic name of one kind or another, and you see different reply rates. So I think we just need to be mindful as buyers as much as we are as sellers to be mindful of our conscious and unconscious biases. We are at time. Thank you so much. Join me if you can at the virtual booth at 2 if you have more questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me questions on LinkedIn, and love to engage further with you. Thanks all.